Welcome to our last section in Module 3 called Modularity in Platform Ecosystems. Most of us, in fact, probably all of us, have daily interactions with platform ecosystems, whether it's Android, whether that's the macOS, Apple ecosystem. We're dealing with those on an everyday basis. Think about the Amazon ecosystem. So we've seen, since the emergence of these large technology platforms or digital technology platforms, we see also an increased interest in examining the interactions between technology innovation and ecosystems, right? So how do technology innovations are launched and supported by these ecosystems? And so when we think about that, the idea of modularity, right? We see modular systems, right, in many pre-digital applications. So just think about the NASA space travel. Most of the rockets there are built in a modular fashion, right? So they can interchange them. They can change the sizes and the shapes. They need to kind of develop a commonality, common assembly strategy so that you can interchange these modules easily, right? And that's not trivial. We see now this modularity concept, especially prevalent in these platform ecosystems. You have standardized interfaces. You have, for example, you can add apps, right, into the Apple ecosystem that have very different functionalities, right, that do very different things. And you can do that because there are common software, there's common software compliance, there are interfaces, there are routines, there are norms, and so that allows kind of the interchangeable, this interchangeable nature, and the incremental innovation to kind of work on these modules or put new improved modules into the system. So modularity becomes more valuable when there are diverse technological options that can be recombined, and if customers have heterogeneous preferences. And what that means is simple, right? So if I want to customize and scale, right, typically my problem is if I want to scale a platform or I want to scale a product, customization is kind of an enemy, right? Because the more I customize, the harder it is for me to scale, to have economies of scale. Now, in the digital economy, that's not such a big problem, actually, right? And so it's incredibly valuable if I have modularity and if I have a possibility to address different types of customer segments on the same platform, right? And we've seen this in Amazon, we've seen this in Apple, we've seen this with Android systems, that this system is built so that parts can kind of move in and out depending on what kind of the customer demographics and preferences look like. Again, where the boundaries of these platforms are is always open to debate. But we see kind of the emergence of these ecosystems in different areas and different industries. Video games is a good example, right? As soon as you established essentially a multiplayer online mode, you have some sort of ecosystem, right? So World of Warcraft had its own currency, has different levels, has a different set of people, right, of global reach. I mean, there's a variety of people that can access that platform, and they can sell products on their platform, et cetera, et cetera. Similarly, we have Amazon, right? They started out selling books. Now they are one of the most dominant e-commerce platforms out there. Now, when we think about this, traditionally, okay, when we look at product bundles, so older, well, smartphones or smart cell phones, so to speak. I've never owned a Nokia E90 communicator, But if you guys remember, the old Nokia, the more advanced Nokia phones had a certain configuration to that, right? They weren't really connected to a lot of other applications. They had their microprocessor, their software, their graphics chips, their internal set of games that you can play, and some RAM, right? So you had the hardware of the Nokia, you had some software. There was very limited connectivity for third-party providers to develop applications for the Nokia, which ultimately, of course, was also its major competitive disadvantage. Now, here what we say, what we see is that's a classic kind of example of the Apple, right? We have our core technology, which is the Apple smartphone or the iPhone, but we also have the connection to that sorry, I forgot, to that web application marketplace. Okay, so sorry, I forgot the name for it. But so we have various apps on the Apple Store, right? And so we can have third-party providers access that system, right? They often share certain functionalities and certain information. If you register yourself as a developer for the app for the iPhone, you also have to abide by certain rules, and so that's how it's kind of connected. At the same time, their core smartphone cannot really be changed by the customer, right? So you can't just put more RAM in there or a different microprocessor. Everything that's customizable is limited to essentially either the exterior, right? So you can get, I don't know, like this protection glass, or you can get like a cover. But anything that's related to the internal technology, you can't really change, right? There isn't really anything that you can do right now. Not even repair, right? So if you've seen kind of the regulatory frameworks in Europe, they force providers now to increase the possibility for you to repair, to have access to the technology to can actually repair that. That was mostly forbidden by Apple. Like you weren't able to, without touching the guarantee, the warranty, to actually access that smartphone. And there are some options here. So, and that's not with every provider, but some, with the Android, most providers that use the Android, well, most other providers than Apple, if not all providers other than Apple, typically use Android. And so with Android, you have a few more customization options, right? So every different phone provider can kind of have their version of Android on their phones. Some phones, in fact, offer you the possibility to change graphics chips and RAM. Not many, right? And typically that just doesn't make a lot of sense for the big manufacturers. But there are providers that allow you to do that, right? So they're giving you nearly full access to the phone to make adjustments and modifications. Now, we have different scenarios here, right? So we have platforms, so we platforms bridging essentially pure modularity and pure integration, right? So traditional products like the Nokia, right, or the I don't remember if the BlackBerry had applications or how many third-party providers had access. But if you think about your typical cell phone before the smartphone, that was essentially a pure integration application, right? Now we have, with the Apple and the Samsung and Android, we have a possibility to have platforms, and then we have pure modularity that actually doesn't happen very often. We do have that with open innovation systems, right? So if you're looking at open software, for example, Linux is an operating system that's open, and for everybody can kind of build their own components into it or their own version. And you actually make money by providing a service of installing Linux and configuring Linux and developing the components for Linux rather than with the software itself. But the most common version, the most common configuration is our typical platform that has a platform owner, so to speak, and that platform owner sets up the governance of the platform, right? What's allowed, what are the rules that you have to abide with. We've seen many recent conversations, right? We've seen Apple take action on data and ads, right? That hurt essentially Snap, Facebook, and other social media companies that make their money through your data and sell ads, right? Or target ads. And Apple said, well, that's not allowed on our ecosystem. If you want to launch your app in our platform, you need to give consumers a choice, right? Whether they want to be tracked or not. And that's a big deal, right? For ad revenue, that makes a big difference. And so we'll see how these things kind of work out. Yeah, so that field is still relatively fresh. There's still a lot of work, a lot of research happening on how platforms kind of operate and how they kind of support or stifle innovation. And that's it. That's our last section for Module 3. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to reach out with any questions and talk to you soon in Module 4.